So welcome to Dreams Around the World. I'm going to experiment with a hybrid episode here where I am going to be recording this. Primarily, I thought to record a podcast, but then I thought, hey, why not turn the camera on and maybe I'll put this on YouTube. So if you're watching on YouTube and you're like, why aren't you looking in the camera enough? You weren't going to get to see this at all. This is like a bonus YouTube thing. So today's a bit of a day of celebration. I emailed out to my subscribers the other day that the ENFP Calling audiobook is out. I did not realize it was out because my distributor didn't tell me, but just happened to look on Audible and saw it had been out for 2 weeks, which was pretty cool. And in the process today of just updating some descriptions of the book and that, I saw that the ENFP Calling at the moment is the number 1 book for behaviorism psychology, the number 2 book for behavioral psychology, and the number 13 book for job hunting and career guides on all of Amazon. And this is Amazon.com. I'm not, creeping up there on Amazon Italy as the one English book. That's a good trick, though, if you ever want a fake bestseller. You get 4 friends in Italy to buy your book at the same time, and you're guaranteed to get it. And the book is the number 1 release or new release for job hunting and career guides, which is pretty cool. Unfortunately, on Amazon, there is no topic for awesome ENFP books, but it kind of tries to figure out your book and put it wherever it is. So this made me feel really great because, to be honest, I've had books in the past be like bestsellers at times, but with this book, I never planned or to think about the ratings on Amazon or thought that it would actually get into any sort of list because it's just for ENFPs. And, Amazon is a big place. There's millions of books. So it's kind of awesome to see. So thank you for your support. If you probably bought the audiobook in the last week or so, I think it's the new audiobook, which really pushed it up. So thank you for that. And I thought I would record something about creating a book and that whole process, how to finish a book as an ENFP. Let's use that as the title here. First of all, just as a side note, I want to say, I really have not been a fan of AI, but it's starting to try and win me over. I think it's very smart. So when I was rewriting the book description, because I had this very lengthy description where I went through all the different things you'll learn and blah, blah, blah. And I just didn't think it was probably the best description for a book. And I went into ChatGPT and I just wrote something like, tell me about the ENFP Calling, or what do people think about the ENFP Calling? Oh, I wrote, what do readers think about the ENFP Calling? And it wrote what is now my book description. So you can go on Amazon or wherever you buy books and you'll find the book description there. Which was generated by ChatGPT. The book was not, for the record. And on Amazon's own page now, they use AI to summarize reviews. It's really playing to my ego. So you go to the what do customers say? This is what Amazon's AI has put together. Customers find the book amazing and inspiring. They say it reinvigorates their confidence in their abilities and inspires them to live the life of their dreams. Readers also mention the book is incredibly helpful in directing them in how to harness their strengths. Inspiring and great book. Okay, this is how AI is going to take over the world. It's not going to be by the power plants, the nuclear missiles. It's going to be by flattering us. And then we're just like, well, AI is nicer to me than people are. Awesome. Okay, I'm going to stop looking at my computer now and share a bit about the process of actually putting this book together, because I think there's a lot in this process for other ENFPs to potentially take away from it. Because one of the things I hear from ENFPs is it's really hard to finish things, or how do you finish things? I've started 100 projects and not finished, etc. And this is something I have lots of videos on YouTube about, and I've shared some things on, and it's still, don't get me wrong, not the easiest thing in the world to do. But I thought I would share just what the process was for me for this specific book as an example, because one of the things that I think holds people back from finishing big projects is our belief systems about what a project should be, what it, entails, what the process is like. So we perhaps think that we're too behind, or we're not where we should be, or something that's not a sign of anything we take as a sign that we're not doing the right thing, or the project's not going well, and so we stop. And so one of the things that can help is knowing that actually this is sort of all part of the process. So let me tell the whole story of how this kind of book came about. So more and more for a while now, I've known that I want to lean into writing as a bigger part of my time. And I have no plans to stop coaching, although, as you may know, I already limit myself to maybe 4 or 5 private coaching clients at a time. I'm not someone who wants to coach, 20 people. I want to be in touch with my clients and more, connected, and do other things. I find it all balances. I find my writing really helps me with coaching because it means I'm always exploring new ideas and expanding my mind and exploring concepts that will help my clients. And my clients help with my writing because we, things come up in sessions and that can be inspiring or insightful or whatever else. But I've known for a while that I wanted to, spend more time on writing. And I thought, you know what? I've written this series of books on MBTI types years ago. It's an okay series. It's sold well. It's not bad. It's not great. It's, to me, I wrote the books. I have books on 8 different types, including there was one for ENFPs. And it's meant to be more of an introduction. You get to know your type. It's like about 100 pages a book. You can take it to the pool, learn about yourself, take some notes, etc. And I thought, you know what? I am working with ENFPs. I love ENFPs as my clients, and that I should write a book for, like, a better book for ENFPs. And then I can move on to being maybe a more general writer. Going into, not like general, like mainstream per se, but writing for books beyond just one personality type. And originally I was taking a bit of the half-ass approach, to be honest, which you see a lot of advice for this about, make a book out of your blog posts, like take your 10 best blog posts and make a book, or get your videos transcribed and someone can edit those and turn it into a book. And there were some elements of that. I was working with a co-writer and definitely writing new things for the book, but also basing, like, he would write some chapters based on maybe my videos or things like that. I would look for blog posts and kind of trying to mix it and put it all together, and set a challenge for myself of finishing the draft of this book. This was back in like 2021. Yes, 2021. And I set this goal, and I may have some videos on YouTube at that time where it's like, I will have the draft of that book done by whatever it was like September 30th. Or I will throw this laptop, which I still have, thankfully, that I had just gotten at the time, into the river. It was like my personal challenge, right? So I worked really hard to get that deadline done. And challenges can work well for that. But it meant like cutting corners, like not maybe doing the perfect edits. It was like rushed. And it also caused a bunch of stress. At the time, I was traveling with my mom at the time, with a friend, Tara, who went on to actually edit the ENFP Calling. And it caused a lot of stress but I got it done. And then, I came back to the book a little bit after, but I was like so stressed by finishing it that I wasn't really, it didn't move forward too much from that. It's a little blurry after that because, to be honest, that was also a few months later is the time when I ended my 6-year relationship. So, and this is not meant to be like a perfect step-by-step guide to what happened. So it's a little blurry over the next time, but basically I lost some attention on the book. I tried to talk to an editor, hired one editor. They were so bad. And it was like, I found an INTJ and they weren't cheap at all. And they were in the UK and their edits were so bad. Like all they did is they would take words that I use that were quite specific, and then they'd look up in a thesaurus and choose a different word that was less specific to what I was trying to convey, and then change it. Was the weirdest thing. So then I talked to Tara about this, and Tara's like, yeah, this editor's bad. Like, I showed her the changes, and Tara's like, how much did you pay, or were you going to pay? And I said, and she's like, I'll edit it for that. Like, I didn't realize that was like the budget. Okay, let's do this. Like, I'd love to, do it with you. So we went through and did some edits, and the book it kind of moved forward, but there was edits being done, et cetera, et cetera. And it then sort of sat, like the edits, not from Tara's side, but from just the whole dynamic of myself, the other writer involved with Tara, it just didn't get all the way there. It sort of sat, but in my mind, it was basically done. And when I would have the time and energy and focus, we'd kind of get a cover made and release it. And then some time passed. I don't know exactly how much time, but probably almost a year. I was then in Spain, and I started to revisit this book. I got a surge of enthusiasm for it, and I started reading it, and I'm like, huh. And before starting to read the draft, I had been brainstorming with someone about the title and like what it's all about and the cover design. So that's where the cover, which I think is really cool, comes from. And actually, my ex-girlfriend Gabby designed it. We're still on great terms, and I love her style. And so the cover was kind of moving forward, and the title was there, and it was like, great. I just got to sort of go through the book and tweak it, and then we'll be done. So I was taking a train to Madrid. I was going to spend a couple weeks in Madrid, where I was more by the coast, and I printed out the book. I went to a copy place, printed out all the book, brought it on the train, and started reading. And I was like, and I just was not happy with the book. And if you've read the ENFP Calling, in I think the very beginning, the intro or the forward, where I just talk about, this doesn't work. I have to rewrite the book. And so I'm reading it, and there were too many things that were vague. The style wasn't great. And, that's what happens when you put together a book, using a mix of some older stuff, some newer stuff, some blog posts, other people involved where you're not maybe in the same room or collaborating really intensely. And it just wasn't up to my standards. I think it probably, because it's quite a specific book for just ENFPs, and I have fans on YouTube and a podcast, probably would have sold okay and all that. And the reviews would have been like not bad. The thing is between the first draft and the second and this read, or I should say like the final draft and this new time, I'd spent a few months in Paris and I'd written another book. And during that time, I really honed my writing abilities and really focused. Like all I did was write during that time. And so my standard had raised a lot. And then I'm coming back to this book and I'm reading it. I'm like, I can do so much better. And the thing was, though, in my mind, like as a quote unquote business person, I just wanted to get it done. And I don't know if you've ever had this, but like there's certain tasks we have to do where we just feel like, I just want that done. And that's a really bad place to get in mentally as an ENFP, because you see things as a have to, like, I just have to get this done, right? Rather than seeing it as a process of creation or enjoyment or something you really want to do. So it had started to get in my brain as like, I just have to do this, right? I just have to get it done. And that makes things painful and lead to really bad quality. And so at some point, I don't remember exactly how or when, but at some point I flipped the switch and was like, no, like I'm going to love this. I'm going to create an awesome book. I'm basically going to think of it as starting from scratch. So I did keep some of the stuff from the first or final first draft or whatever, but I essentially rewrote a lot of things, and like from scratch. And that I often find it easier to just write something new than edit something that really doesn't work. And so I saw it now as a new creation process, and that process started in April with the realization of like, this doesn't work, and thinking, maybe I can rewrite it in like a week or two. That definitely spread out. I forget the exact timeline on how it all came together, but there was definitely at least a few months of rewriting it. I think it maybe was a bit longer. And that. So let's take some of that apart, right? We have a project that was meant to be fairly simple, that in a way I tried to take an easy route. In my mind, I wasn't thinking it was an easy route, and I was busting my butt. As I said, I was stressed trying to finish it, and I wrote some good things during that process. But I was thinking about like how to get a book done rather than how to write a great book. And so I was in this certain process for it, and it obviously that happened. There was a lot of stress. It then was put aside. Because there wasn't a clear plan of what to do next, and maybe because unconsciously of that I knew I wasn't happy with it, it sat for a while, right? And it was at risk of becoming one of these projects that ENFPs start and put a lot of effort into and just doesn't go anywhere. I was, for whatever reason, just fortunate to get back to it and refocus on it. And at that point, it could have felt like a really burdensome administrative task. I've just got to edit it. I've got to finish it. I should outsource it. And what worked for me was the opposite, was fully investing myself in it, in the creative process. Like, I want this to be great. I'm going to focus on it, and I'm going to go until it is done. And it is something that I'm really proud of. Then, oh God, this is just going to keep going forever. It's going to be a long podcast. Okay, so then, taking the jacket off. It's getting hot. Okay, so then I had this new draft done, which then I got Tara's help with again. God bless Tara for all her help during this period. And then had some test readers. Thank you all again who went through it and provided their feedback and notes and everything like that. Made those edits. And then there was the process of laying out the book. Now, with laying out the book, I did my best to hire someone that was local, was referred, professional at this. And long story short, it just really did not work out. And I don't know what it is. I don't think I'm a pain in the ass necessarily to work with, although maybe I am. But I got back the first draft of the book formatted, like for the print edition, because I had, if you own the print edition, you know this, it's not just like plain. I wanted illustrations and some cartoons, and I wanted it to have a really beautiful style to it, like to be something that has a feeling. And there were like basic things with the draft I got back, like just the way fonts were used, that I'm not an expert, but I've read a few guides to typography, and I'm like, I don't think this is right. And I showed it to other designers, and they all said, no, this is like bad. So I'm like, another deadline missed, because we were on schedule to publish. Ultimately, Mila, my wonderful INFJ girlfriend, saved my ass. And me and her, I know a little bit of InDesign and layout stuff from many years ago when I had a newspaper. And so we went all in for a week. So it was kind of that same thing. It wasn't like, let's outsource us this. It's like, let's go to the coffee shop, 10 hours a day, techno music, and just go and just focus on making it really great. And that is ultimately what happened. And it all got done for about September 1st. And then I had an event here in Prague, I think a few days later. I forget exactly, but roughly then. So it was finished. It was super intense. And then I had people, I think it was arrive in Prague, or there was something back to back. I don't remember. But basically, the 2 weeks after publishing were really intense. And then I had a trip planned to Canada and things. So I ultimately never got fully into promoting the book. I almost killed myself getting it done, and then didn't really do promotions. I just sort of thought, oh, it will probably sell itself a bit, which the audiobook has now, but it wasn't initially, before there were reviews and things like this. So, yeah, and now we are almost a year after that. So we're at July, and the audiobook is finally done. Now, word of advice to any aspiring authors, I highly, highly recommend you release your print, your digital, and your audiobook all at the exact same time. One, when you do the print edition, you'll find mistakes in the digital edition, or vice versa. Two, when you do your audiobook, wow, will you catch mistakes, typos, and things you want to improve. To do a narration, I did the narration myself. The first couple hours of narration were so bad. For some reason, I thought I wasn't allowed to breathe, which is weird because I've done a podcast for years. But I was like, on audiobooks, I don't think you can breathe. So I was talking and then for the ENFP, this is what they do. And then I don't know, it was so bad. And then I watched some videos about how to narrate and this. And this is part of the process too of doing things is sometimes when you just want something to be done, it's really, really frustrating when you don't have the skills to do it. And that's when it can also be another time as an ENFP to just quit. Be like, And there were times with the audiobook where I was getting a little frustrated, but I was so committed to doing it. So I reminded myself, this is a new skill. So sit back, learn about it, practice, read some guides. And I did that. Didn't take, it was maybe a day or two of kind of learning how it works. And basically a big part is printing out everything before and reading it and highlighting maybe words you'll emphasize or how you want to say things and stuff like that. And so I did that and then went through the narration, and you find a lot of I think I made over 100 fixes to small typos or little mistakes. And that, again, that's with test readers and an editor and going through doing the design. It's just it's 300 pages, or it was 300 pages. I trimmed off about 30 pages in the when I went through the audio as well, just I thought to make the book flow better. So yeah, we're almost a year out, and finally everything is done, including the extras that I had promised readers when the book came out and didn't have them all done. That was me being such an ENFP. I'm I want to make an audio series for people for free so they can listen to it to remind them of the book and all this stuff. All of it is done now, but that really dragged on. What are the lessons learned? Oh my God, so many lessons. So first, I'll start with maybe the more general, and then I'll get into actually specifics on doing a book, and that kind of thing. And I am considering, if you're an email subscriber, you might have seen this, that I sent out an email a few weeks ago about, interest if you're an author or aspiring to be. And I'm thinking of doing something. I had a client say to me, you should teach people how to write a book and that. And I'm debating, it might be even more a writer's accountability group. It might be more that. But when I sent out the email, I got a lot of responses from it, and a lot of interest. And I'm just sort of thinking it through on the timing and that. So on the big picture, one of my takeaways is you keep your eye on the prize. So when you have multiple things you want to do, multiple, like, let's say 3 books at a time you're trying to do or things like that, it can get very easy to do none. And so one of the things is, once there was some risk of this book slipping away, but it's just something that I was keen on doing and was somewhat pot committed to doing, invested in, that I wasn't going to walk away from it, even if I added big periods of delay. Now, those delays ultimately I think they did help the book a lot, because that time in Paris writing a new book absolutely improved my skills, which I then brought back and rewrote the book. But there's all these delays in the middle, especially around the audiobook, that period. And it kind of sucks that there's a lot of time that was used up in between. Now, I didn't do nothing during that time. I was doing other things with my business, started working with some great new clients and things like that. But there was quite a big gap. But ultimately, it all got done and has been a success because I kept focus on what did I keep focused on? I kept focused on the ultimate outcome, right? Getting it done. And so when I was frustrated, when I was trying to record and the neighbor's dog barked, or I realized the acoustics weren't good, or I recorded for 2 hours and then I realized I sucked because I wasn't breathing, it wasn't like, storm off, right? It was like, okay, this sucks, but I'm going to learn, I'm going to keep applying, and I'm going to, I focus mentally on that I'm developing a skill, right? So I'm saying to myself, hey, I am learning how to narrate. This is not going to be the last audiobook I ever do. So I'm going to develop this skill, and then it's something that I'll be able to come back and use in the future, right? So focusing on skill development and creation makes it much, much more engaging as an ENFP than if you focus on just finishing things or being task oriented, which can be really demotivating at different times. Now, my big takeaways for finishing a book, whether you're finishing a book and you're an ENFP or an INFP, if you've got ADHD, any of these things, it probably is something that will be a challenge, but will help you really grow and will be really satisfying at the end of the day. So, first big thing is I'm going to say this as my advice to myself. What I will remember for next time is, first is focus on creation. Love the process and take extreme pride in the outcome. Like, I want to make an amazing book. There's a whole world out there where companies will write a book for you, where you can take your blog posts and put them all together. You can hire co-writers and ghostwriters and all these things. And there's a time and a place for that. And for some people, if you're an ENTJ business person and, you don't have a creative bone in your body, that's a great way to do it probably, right? Hire a co-writer or just a ghostwriter and have it done. And that book can support your business, sure. But if you're really I want to write, you've got to see it in the pride of the creation process. And ultimately, one of my big regrets with the earlier series of books I did is, at that time I was really focused and disciplined, and it would not have taken that much more time to have those books, instead of them being like a C or C plus, could have got them up to like a B plus without too much extra work. And they would have continually sold better, been more valuable to people, and I would have had more pride in them. There's a reason that you may have read in a bio, like author of 11 books, sold 50,000 books. I never linked to my books. Probably at some point someone was like, that's weird. And it's because I know what I'm capable of as a writer, and I really, I admire writers. A lot of the books I read are, I was say by writers, of course they are. No, a lot of the books I read are writers talking about their life as writers, what it was like living in Paris in the 1800s and writing their first novel, this sort of stuff. And I really admire the craft. And so when you're doing a book or anything big, you could apply this to other things. You have this source of energy and drive until it's finished. And I really, really recommend harnessing that, because once it's done, it's really hard to reconnect with it and fix things, upgrade, etc. Now, there's a place for that. Don't get me wrong. Like, you take a break and then you come back and then you see it with new eyes and that. But what I mean is, when you have that initial excitement of like, I'm going to write this thing and people might hate it or they might love it, and I really want them to love it, so I'm going to like pour my heart into it. The longer you can harness that for, and the better you can make that final product, that rewards you for the rest of your life, right? If you half-ass something, you're now like, I have this half-ass book, right? It's like, cool, you've done a book, but what, right? So really taking pride. Carving out dedicated space, to me, it's the only way that has worked for me, is really dedicated space. It doesn't mean you don't do some other things, but it means your focus is primarily on writing. So during the time, of course, I had coaching calls, I did some ENFP Unleashed stuff and things like that. And I think I even did some YouTube videos. I was doing the ENFP reboot at one point. So I was doing a YouTube video a day, and the book, actually. But overall, it needs to be like an obsessive focus, I think. Some writers are different in that, but for me, it tends to be a mode. I tend to be like, I kind of have coach mode, business person mode, and writer mode. You can guess which involve more or less wine. Technically speaking, as a writer, a few things I would do different in the future. I would do my best to do a bit more of an outline and write the book in order with a bit more of a polished draft. I've read a lot about other ENFP writers, and some of them are like the obsessive, like they write basically a polished first draft where there's almost no edits needed. And I can totally get why that's the case, right? Because it's just like, I don't want to edit. I don't want to go back. So when you're doing it the first time and it's new and engaging, the better you get that. And sometimes I write these sloppy first drafts, and there's some genius in it because they're really like free flow, and there'll be some really funny stuff that comes from that, or something really insightful, or like part of that really helps me get the emotion by just writing totally unedited. But it leads to some tricky edits, especially when you don't write the book in order fully, which I've done sometimes in the past, where I'll be inspired to jump ahead and write a different section. And then after, you create all this extra work for yourself. So the next book I write, I'm going to attempt to start with a bit more of an outline and then write it a bit more in order I'm going to experiment with more of a polished draft. I might find that isn't my style, but it's certainly, the topic of this is finishing things. So from the concept of finishing it, it's going to be a lot easier with a more polished first draft in the right order. Then it's pretty easy to go through and do an edit. But when you have 300 pages, you print out in 30 different chapters, and you're like, what's the best way to flow this? Like with the ENFP Calling, do I start with health or relationships or jump right to calling? It's like, there was a lot of thought went into that, and went into it, and these different things. What else? As I said earlier, I would highly recommend doing the audiobook almost as part of your revision. So as like your final revision, because when you have to go through and read it, you catch a lot of things and you can make those changes. So rather than wait until you have the completely final version, it's like in print and then you make an audiobook. I would start with like what I think is a final version, do the audiobook, make any tweaks and edits, and then they can all be released at the same time. What else? Definitely with promotion, this isn't so much about finishing. Well, it is actually. So first, you have to anticipate the need to promote your book and how tired you will be after finishing your book. So a couple things with that. It might mean that you aim to say finish your book June 1st, and you say I'll release it in September, and July and August I'm just going to the beach, and then I'll do all the promotion in September and release it, right? That's probably a smart way to do it. Yeah, that's probably the best way to do it in retrospect. Or you just before you finish it, you get kind of everything lined up for the promotion because you're going to be exhausted and that. And you do need to promote. I have received more emails from people like beautiful praise for the book than I have reviews. People don't leave reviews. Sometimes someone will email me and tell me how amazing the book is. And then I'll say, would you mind leaving a review? And they do, but they say, oh, I was going to wait until I finish the book. And I'm like, it's a 300-page book. I need reviews now, if you will. And that. So as an author, like I thought, I have a YouTube channel for ENFPs. I have email subscribers to ENFPs. And like for me, if I see a book anywhere near this close to the life, to me, I'm like buying that right away. I buy a lot of books. And so I just sort of assumed it would be like, hey guys, I finished the book. And people would go out and buy it and leave reviews and all that. And almost nothing happened. I was traveling. I was in Canada, and I checked finally the sales after the first 2 months of the book being out, and it was like minuscule. Like an old mediocre book I wrote for INTJs was selling more. And so then I buckled down and I did some promotion. I asked people to leave reviews. I asked people who read the book to leave reviews and stuff like that. And all that. And then things started to move and things started to happen with it. But, Amazon and these book marketplaces in general are crowded, which is another reason why mediocre is almost not worth your time, because there's a billion mediocre books. And with AI, if you're like just a okay book, like good luck with AI now, because it's not like there's a certain amount of people who are just trying to game the system and whatever. And Amazon is probably cool with that. I mean, if you look at what they do with their products and how much is junk made in China that copies, proper brands who created proper products. And Amazon themselves, they have a knockoff of the Yeti mic they make. This was like an original designed high quality mic, and Amazon just knocks it off, makes it in China and sells it. I'm not super optimistic that they're going to care if books are made in AI. I'm guessing what they'll do is say, hey, if the book is AI generated, we get 50% or we get more of the money than we would normally do. And then they're just going to start generating their own AI books, which means if you want to write and you want to have something, it needs to be special. You need to be special in terms of, you're all special, but what I mean is like have a presence and have people know you, because we all love to learn. Like when I start reading a fiction author, I always learn about their life, and it's so much more enjoyable, right? Because then you experience their books differently. So that, and writing something, special, like where you really put your heart into it. If you're writing something kind of generic and like what AI could almost generate, there's no point. And that all goes back to my original thing. Love the process, love the creating, and all will go better, and you'll have pride in it, and it will be wonderful. I still have a couple little behind the scenes things to do before this is fully finished, but I have a great sense of pride in finishing this book. And part of me, I'm a very confident person, but I also have my, another side on that. And like I said to Mila yesterday, I was like looking at the reviews. I'm like, I don't think the book sucks. That's kind of how I can describe it. I'm like, that's as far as my ego lets me take it. It's like, it doesn't suck. I'm happy with that. Where if you read the reviews, maybe they give a little more praise than it doesn't suck. But I think that's honestly really healthy. There's unhealthy parts to being a critic of yourself, a harsh critic. But I think also it's what can lead to great performance and great art is like really wanting it to be better. Once an artist, and I'm not necessarily putting myself in an artist, but I do think I work like an artist. in a very creative way with my writing. Once an artist thinks of themselves as like, I'm wonderful, like I'm the best, they're going to suck. And I think that kind of is the case. They're gonna lose a lot. Except George Clooney, he is always so consistently good. As George Clooney, of course, right? And this is the George Clooney versus Johnny Depp debate, which is you have a George Clooney who was consistently good but never blow your mind great, and then you have people like a Johnny Depp who's has his internal battles and struggles and this and that, but like can pull out performances that will just blow your mind. All right, my camera's telling me I have 55 seconds left on the SD card before it possibly deletes all this footage. So that's it. The ENFP Calling, it is available on Audible, which is the best place for me. If you get it on Audible, it helps me probably the most. And also, like, I've had Audible for probably 15 years. It's a good place to listen to audiobooks. I think it's great. It's obviously available in print and digital. And you can do the thing, too, where you get, like, the Kindle version and then the Audible, and you listen at the same time as you read. That could be fun, too. Yeah, they're on. I've mentioned Amazon, but they're available everywhere on iBooks, Google Books, Kobo, Nook, Barnes and Noble, anywhere you get books, audiobooks.com. They are available. So thank you for your support. If you love it, leave a review. As I said, few people do, so I really appreciate that. And thank you so much for your support. And I hope you found this helpful.